Hello everyone, welcome to the CS Revelation. Today's video is going to focus on creating a NetBeans Java project that makes a connection to an SQLite database. It is a login system, a username password login system that authenticates users against a database table. So for this, we're using an SQLite database. This is the table that we created. It has these four users. Admin, Tom, Alex, and Anna with these passwords. Of course, we have created the table. We inserted the accounts, and this is just a view of the table. Now, this is a sample run. Let's say we type the username admin and the password, which is the correct one, and click login. It says login successful. You click OK, and it will take you to a registration page. A page that's going to be in part 2 of this video. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing that we want to do is to download SQLite Studio. So simply type in SQLite Studio, and the first link that pops up here is going to be the download link. So SQLitestudio.pl, click on that, and then click on the download button to download SQLite. It's going to be a zipped folder. You would want to extract this onto, for example, the desktop. So I'm going to extract it onto my desktop. So if you're using WinRAR or you're using WinZip or any of the compressing apps, so extract to a specified folder. I'm going to extract that onto the desktop. Click OK and go to your desktop, and you should find SQLite in the desktop. Now, what you want to do now is to scroll down until you find the executable for SQLite Studio. That is what's going to load SQLite application. So that's not really an installation file. So this is just a .exe. So this does not need to be installed. But what probably you want to do is to pin this into the taskbar, for example. So you could pin it to the taskbar, or you could pin it to the start, or you could create a shortcut and put it on the desktop so you will be having an easy access to it. Okay, so I already pinned it to my taskbar right here, and that's how I can start SQLite Studio. So SQLite Studio will with SQLite, you will be able to create a database, and you will create tables and retrieve data from these tables and so on. And I'll show you that later, the database that we're creating for our application. Now, the next thing that we want to do is to download the jar file. To download the jar file, simply type in SQLite jar JDBC download. Okay, click on that and go to the link where it says jardownload.com. That's the one. And then scroll down to the download link, which is here. So SQLite JDBC library, click on that, and you will download it, and also compressed file. So you want to unzip that, or actually you could actually move this onto, for example, the desktop for now. So right now, we downloaded SQLite Studio for creating our database, and also the SQLite JDBC for our database driver, so we can run it with NetBeans. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is to open up this SQLite Studio folder and go to SQLite Studio, create a shortcut. You can simply right click on it and choose create a shortcut. I already created a shortcut here. I'm going to move it to the desktop so I have easy access to SQLite Studio. So I simply just load it by double clicking this. Now go ahead and double click it to start SQLite. This is the SQLite IDE in which you can create databases and create tables as well. So the first thing that we want to do is to create a database, a new database. So I'm going to create a database on my desktop for now. So click on this button here that says add a database. and then click on this green button that's going to be creating a new database file. So when you click on that, simply just browse to the desktop. That's where we're going to be creating our new database. Name this database, for example, I'm going to name this one login accounts, right? And then DB, and then just hit save. Okay, now click OK, and this is the new database that has been created. Okay, now these are basically, if you have tables, they will show here and so on. Now we want to create some tables in this database. So let's create our accounts table. So I'm going to say create, so create table. The table name is accounts, and the columns for this table will be user, which is of type varchar, and a maximum number of characters to be, we're going to set it to a maximum of 20. This will be the primary key of this table. And then the next column is going to be the password. So I'm going to call it pass, and that's also varchar with a maximum number of characters of 10. And that's it. So this is my accounts table. Okay, so I'm going to run this. It should say query finished in 13 seconds, and that means the table is created. Now let's insert some data into this. By the way, you can look here that tables now are labeled with 1. So that means if you open that, you'll see that accounts is a table, and it has 2 columns. And the 2 columns are user and pass. Okay, now let's insert some data into it. So I'm going to do insert into, accounts. We're going to insert few accounts. So I'm going to say values. The first account, okay, so these are varchars. So the first, let's say username is going to be admin, and the password is going to be, let's say 111. And then we're going to have, let's say 3 more users. So we're going to have 4 insert statements. So this is going to be, for example, Tom, and this is going to be Alex, and this is Anna. Okay, so we have 4 users. This is a password 222. This one is 333, and this one is 444. This is just for testing purposes. Now highlight all of these, and then simply run, and it should say query finished, rows affected 4. And that means we have 4 rows in our table. If you want to confirm that you have the rows in there, you do select star from accounts. So it is mandatory, or it is a first step that we must go through, which is creating our accounts table. Okay, so setting up the database environment. So now we have our database, which is called login accounts database. And we have created 4 accounts into the table that is called accounts. Now these are the accounts: admin, Tom, Alex, and Anna, and these are the passwords. Okay, now let's go ahead and create. So this is the database that we just created, by the way. It's in the desktop. But next, let's open up NetBeans and create a NetBeans project. Okay, now Java application, new Java application. Click next. Let's name this login register project. Okay, so that's login register project. You can call it anything you like. Click finish. So this is the project that we just created. Yeah, so this is the main class and everything. This is automatically generated. We're not going to use this for now, but we actually still going to continue with setting up the environment. So now that you created this project, that means the project folder, that's the one we're going to go to. So go to, mine is in documents, in NetBeans projects. That's where you're going to find the folder for this project. So it's called login register project right here. Just open that up. So open up your project folder. This is it, in which we're going to place 2 things. The first thing is going to be the jar file, in the root level of this project, we're going to drag and drop that jar file, and also the database is going to be dragged and dropped into okay, yeah, it's still running, so I should exit out and try again, and now it's moved. So the database also has to be moved into the root folder, root level of your project, okay? Now that we've done that, the database and the jar file are now in my NetBeans project. I can continue with this. So I go back to NetBeans and let's set up the environment. So you want to go to services. You want to expand databases. Notice that we don't have the driver for SQLite, and that's what we want to do now, add the driver. So you right click on drivers, click new driver, and then click add. And then you're going to browse to your project folder. Mine is in NetBeans project and it's called login register project. Open that, and you're going to choose the jar file that we already added to the project and click open and click OK. Now once you click OK, you notice that SQLite is now added here. Okay, so we added the driver, but we want to make a connection to the database. So you're going to say connect using SQLite. And then in this JDBC URL, this is where you're going to place the URL to your database, which is now in the project folder. So go ahead and open File Explorer and then go to your project folder again, which is in Documents. So go to NetBeans Projects and then Login Register Project. And then you want to copy the address as text from here. So right click and say copy address as text. Or you could just simply, yeah, so you can copy that and go back here, type that instead of this. So you're going to type it, just keep this part and then type that and then add with the slash and then add the name of your database. So we called our database login accounts database, okay, .db. Do not forget the extension because it is called login accounts db, but .db, that is the extension. I just want to confirm that I'm using the right name, which is login accounts.db. Okay, so it is correct. Now you want to test the connection, so you click on test connection. It says connection successful. Succeeded, that is because you're given the right link. Okay, then click next and click next again, then click finish. Okay, now you notice that the driver has been added, the connection has been added, and now you are making secure connection or successful connection with your database. Notice that if you expand this link, you will be able to see the tables that are in your database. You have the user, you have the path, which is the two columns for the accounts table. The last thing that we want to do here in our environment setup is to right click on the libraries, and in here we're going to add the jar folder, which is going to be for the SQLite JDBC 3.20.1, right, which we added to our root level of our project folder, and then just simply click on open. So let me browse to my project folder, and it is login register P, and this is the jar file that I want, and I'm going to click open, and now the jar file is added here, so it's added to my libraries. Okay, all right, now let's move on to the next step. Okay, so right click on the source packages, click new, and then click on Java class. Let's call this DB connection. That's the name for our class. And then let's take out these comments. Let's clean it up a little bit. Okay, and the next I'm going to create an object from connections. So I'm going to be connection connection con equals null. Okay, and in order for me to use any of these classes, I have to import the SQL java.sql, so I need that. So I'm going to say import java.sql. Next, I'm going to create a method. I'm going to call this public static. I'm going to call this, it's of type connection first of all. The return type is a connection, and the name of this, I'm going to call it connection DB. Okay, so connection DB, and we're going to type the following code to establish the connection. Okay, so everything has to go in a try catch, and that is to handle any exceptions that could occur when establishing this connection. So try catch, and now we're going to use the class dot for name. This is for the driver's link. So it's org dot SQLite dot JDBC. Okay, and next we're going to use the driver manager. So I'm going to do connection con equals driver manager dot get connection. Okay, and we're getting the connection from where? It's from the link that we have in our services, which is this. So we're going to do okay, so it's JDBC SQLite, and then colon is going to be the name of my database, which is login accounts db.db. Okay, so that's taken care of. Next, I'm going to have a message. I'm going to print a message once the connection has been established. I'm going to print a message saying connection succeeded, for example. So connection succeeded. If connection has failed, it should not print this message. So that's good to have to make sure. Then we're going to return the object con because it returns a connection. So we're going to return con. And if in case the connection hasn't been established and we have an error message, so we should type a message here saying system out, say print ln connection failed, and we're going to add to this some more detail from the E object, which is the exception object, and we're going to return null. So instead of returning con, we're going to return null because we haven't established a connection. Okay, so this is the code to establish the connection, and that's the code we're going to make a call for later on in our JForm form. Okay, so now next what you want to do is right click on the source package, and we're going to add now our GUI. So JFrame form, we're going to call this login, and we're going to design our login now screen. Okay, so it's pretty simple. All we're going to need is going to be a two labels, and we're going to need a text field and a password field. Okay, so text field for the user and a password field for the password, and we're going to need a button to trigger the code for the login, and maybe later we add an exit button as well. Okay, now let's edit the text for this. That should be username. So username, and this should be password. Okay, and Okay, and this text field here, we're going to edit its text. So we're going to remove everything from there. So the text should be blank. And I'm going to also change the variable name to be txt_user. Instead of jtextfield1, I'm naming it txt_field, txt_user. And I'm going to change the variable name for that one to be called txt_pass. And I can also change the default text here. I'm going to put, let's leave the default for now. Okay, and the button here, I'm going to also edit its text. I'm going to say login, and I'm going to also change its variable name to be btn login. Also, the button for exit, I'm going to change its text to exit, and I'm going to change its variable name to btn exit. And later on, we're going to code all of these buttons. All right, so let's adjust this a little more. So this is for the username and password. This is my exit button. This is my login button. Okay, so this should be the login window. So you want to go to the login form and copy the code that is all the way in the bottom in the main method, the code that creates and displays the form, or actually cut it. And now we're going to move it to the main method of our project. So when we click on this run button, it will create the login form, and it will start our GUI. All right, now let's go to the source of this. Okay, let's clean this up a bit. Take out all these comments, just a little bit confusing here. Okay, and the next thing that we want to do is create the following variables, global variables. So the connection con equals null. And the next variable is prepared statements. Okay, so prepared statement pst equals null. And also we need the result set. So all these variables are necessary for running any SQL code. Okay, now because these are, we need to use these classes that are in java.sql, so we need to import this package here. So java.sql, now we have all these access to these classes, and then we're going to, when the components of the login form are initialized, we also want to establish the communication, the connection. Okay, so we're going to say con equals, so our DB connection, and we want to use the method connection DB. So technically what this is doing is using the method connection DB, which is defined in the DB connection class, to make the connection. So this is where we defined our connection DB method, and this is the code that it does to establish the connection. So we're only making a call to that class. Okay, so instead of like typing that code here, all that code, so we simply typed it in a separate class and we just called it here. Okay, let's run this code and let's see if we have established connection. So it says connection succeeded, and also we got our login GUI here popping up, prompting us for a username and password. Well, so far nothing happens here because you haven't done anything or haven't typed any code for these buttons to add the process of authentication, and we get to do it next. Now let's go back to the design, and now we're going to add the code for the login button. So double click the login button and it should take you to this action, btn login action performed. So this is the action that's going to be performed in the event of clicking on that button. Okay, so we're going to type the following code. So first we're going to create our query in a string. So I'm going to call this SQL, string SQL, and it is equal to the following query. So it is a select statement. So I'm going to say select star from the table, which is accounts. right? So our table name is accounts. Again, if you forgot, you can go back to services and you expand this and look at the tables, and it's called accounts. And the two column names are user and pass that we're making connection to. Okay, so select star from accounts where, where user, which is the first column, so where user is like, question mark, and because it has to be both, so it's going to be and pass is equal or like, you can do equal or like, and then question mark, and then semicolon and another semicolon. Okay, so this is our query, and we defined it here in this string SQL. The next thing we want to do is to create this try catch. All right, so try catch. Let me move this down. So catch. Okay, so exception E, and all right, so for the try part, we're going to type, so the PST object that we created earlier is going to equal to con dot prepared statement, and the prepared statement is going to be the SQL statement that we have typed here, and then we're going to say PST dot set string. This is, let me tell you what this is for. This is to say that the first argument, which is the first question mark here, is going to be coming from the following text field, which is txt user. So I'm going to say txt user dot get text, right? Because we're trying to authenticate. We're trying to authenticate these users. So when they type their username, is going to be typed in here in txt user, right? So we're saying the first argument, which is passed to the select statement instead of this question mark, is going to be labeled here 1, and it's coming from txt user, right? That's why we say txt user.getText. And then for the prepared statement, for the second argument, so we're going to say set string again, and it's going to be the second argument here, which is the second question mark here, is coming from the second text field, which is txt pass and get text. Notice because it is password field, that's why it's barred there. But like I said, the first one is the first argument. The second one is the second argument, which refer to the first question mark and the second question mark. If we had other question marks here, we will have more arguments, and they ordered incrementally. So we have txt user, that's where we get the first argument, and txt pass, that's where we get the password argument. Next, we want to execute the query. So we're going to say rs, which is the result set, is equal to the prepared statement dot execute, right? So we're going to execute the query now. Notice that the prepared statement is basically this query. So we're given this query to the prepared statement, but we're also setting its argument to the first value and the second value that come from the text fields. And then this prepared statement that we have prepared, we're passing it to the execution, and that's going to be in result set. Next is that we should say if, let's say we get something back from this query, if result set has a value, right? So we say dot next. That means we have found a user with the given username and password, and then we're going to have a JOption pane dot message. JOption. So JOption pane dot show message. So we're going to show a message, a dialog box saying login successful. So I'm going to say null, and then I'm going to say login successful. Okay, so login successful here. And the next thing that we want to do is to Actually, we're going to expand on this later because we're going to add the register form, the registration form. So when we do that, we're going to, once the login is successful, we will hide the login form, and we will make the registration window visible. But now let's test this out. So we're going to click on run. So we got our GUI here. It says connection successful. So our GUI here is waiting for a username and password. I'm going to give it a correct username and password. Remember, the usernames and password that we have created were admin, for example, and the password will be 111. And if I click login, I get login successful here, right? So the dialog box. Now that is the login part. Of course, we can expand on this by enhancing some of its features. So for example, let's work on some of these features. The exit button. So double click the exit button. And that's where we're going to put the code for the exit button. So I'm going to say this dot dispose. So this dot dispose, that's going to make it exit. So let's run it again and click on exit, and there you go. Okay, so the next step is going to be creating the registration form and also adding it to the logic.